Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Bolier Talks Tech, where I talk with global experts on recruitment and technology for recruitmenttech.com. I'm here with Leah McKelvey today. Leah, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Renee. My name is Leah, as Renee said. I am the Regional Vice President for Bullhorn, which is a recruitment technology firm serving the staffing and recruitment industry globally. I'm working with mainland Europe, and my team is based in Rotterdam.
Okie dokie, thanks a lot. That was short and sweet. Today we are talking about digital transformation in staffing business, or better, how do you digitally transform a staffing business? Let's start with some of your observations. What do you see in the market at the moment?
Yes. So right now, and I guess a little more background, as you said. So I've been working in the staffing and recruitment industry for over 15 years, first in the North American market and now within UK and I and across Europe. And a lot of the
Mhm.
trends we see in this market are continuing with conversations and things we've seen globally on really looking to improve efficiencies and increase reach and experience and change some of the models within the staffing industry to increase margins. So if I think about some of the trends that we're seeing that are really advancing the conversations about digital transformation, it is
Yeah,
topics like compliance, that people want more flexibility as regulations change. So having a digital
yeah.
solution or being able to respond in a more agile way is in
Mhm.
really accelerating some of the conversations, especially here in Europe. If I think about the consolidation happening within the industry, both with smaller firms looking to be acquired or different mergers with companies across different countries to offer a more global solution, that's often
Yeah,
driving those leaders to think about how they integrate their systems and really focus on more synergies and the ability to enhance cross selling or provide a more holistic solution to some of their clients. So, those are some of the
yeah.
trends that I think are driving more efforts on digital transformation. Then there's other business models and things happening in the talent acquisition space that I think is
Mhm.
are making our industry intrigued, like human cloud platforms and direct work engagement. So something like an Upwork, which really gives freelance and remote workers the opportunity to connect with employers directly. So how do
Mhm.
staffing firms both compete and potentially leverage talent pools from some of those models? The other interesting trend, which then really pivots to the digital transformation, is how do you take some of those lessons and start leveraging within your own recruitment firm? So offering more on-demand communities and platforms for your own talent, candidates, and
Right.
clients to engage directly in those type of work arrangements. So I
Because
think a lot of
I can
the
imagine that.
yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. I can imagine for a lot of executives, they see these platforms as a threat that will like eat away from their business. But you are saying you see a way for them to actually embrace this change and these trends and to grow from it, and you see this an opportunity for them.
I see it as an opportunity. I think that a lot of the talent that is using those freelance platforms is not always competitive with the candidates that staffing industries are reaching. That obviously
Mhm.
depends on the type of industry that you serve. I know in the States, I had talked to some firms that more in commercial that were feeling already the threat of some of their candidates that had a better option to drive for Uber than maybe a lower
Yeah,
paid job in the industrial space. So I think there is a real threat, but the talent and the talent technology in really leveraging the preferences of how people want to connect. I think the industry
right.
can learn from some of those trends to think about what
Yeah.
other digital solutions they can offer within their portfolio to become even a greater value add for the talent and the clients that they work with.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And so there's obviously a lot of talk about digital transformation in staffing businesses. But I bet ask 100 executives within this industry, what does it actually look like? Like, what does your business look like today, and what would it look like tomorrow if you would have done a full digital transformation? Not many of them would give us a good or complete answer. So maybe you can help us here a bit. What does it look like? What are the foundations? I think we also have a slide on this to help our audience a bit.
Absolutely. And you're right, Renee. I believe the industry overall, when you look compared to other industries, has not always been known for being an early adopter of new technologies. So there's many processes and opportunities, even at the foundation layer, that
Mm.
the industry across the board, from large companies to small companies in really every region that I've worked in, are looking to still address understanding their processes and being able to add more digital facets to that, but also to ensure that the information surrounding those processes is getting into one single system. So the
Mhm.
biggest challenge, I think, for most companies and the most critical step is this digitization piece to ensure your data associated with all of the different things that we look at here, whether that be jobs that you're in new order requisitions, or the skills and categories that your recruiter is adding in addition to the CV once it's parsed, the ability to get that data into a single system of record and normalized in the same way across your different entities and branches and field locations is really a core in order to drive that next stage, which I
Yeah.
think most people, when they think about digital transformation, are excited about the really cool stuff like what
Yeah.
AI can do and how is the recruiter going to show up at their desk at the next day and the pre-matched candidates with scores are already sitting there. And I think there's some companies that are more advanced, but
Mhm.
from the baseline, most of the industry, which makes sense because we have so many manual steps and different processes that people have built, are in this place of moving data into that single system of record so they then can use that to create more automation and sophisticated AI and machine learning on top of that.
Yeah, and I guess that's a harsh message, but ultimately, right, because it means that a lot of people, they want the cool tools and the nice outcomes, but first they just got to do their own shit, which is gather information in a system in such a way that actually data can be handled in such a way that you can do these nice things. I saw a couple of things in the second stage. So let's also talk a bit about the promise of digital transformation. I saw, for example, recommendations and predictive analytics and that kind of stuff. Can you, in a couple of simple sentences, explain like what kind of recommendations, what kind of predictions could you get out of your data if you do build that nice data set and do your basic work?
Yeah, the nirvana. I think it depends on what area you're looking at throughout your process. And
Mm,
that's what's so promising with automation and AI within our industry is there's really exciting areas where you can add that into your process. So if I think about recommendations in two lenses, both in the internal piece. So some of the stuff
mm,
we're working on, even around how do you focus your recruitment and your sales team on those really revenue generating tasks. So if you're able to use the recommendations and the learning to help guide them through the system, both in making sure that they're doing the right activities that are going to help you either reach more candidates or follow up with clients at the right time or
yeah.
preemptively get in front of clients if you know from the data that this is typically when they are looking to hire based on your
Mm,
historical record with them. So there's some really interesting activities that people are doing internally already, but then also on the candidate matching and using the data and everything in your system to ideally create a place where your recruitment team can have a pre-vetted, already sourced list of candidates that they're then, maybe there's already some marketing that have happened with those candidates that drove the scoring, and you know
Yeah.
their likelihood to take a role with this. So it can be applied to different parts of the process, and we see
Mm.
companies already doing some neat testing with that, but it really is not going to be effective if that base has not been covered, because you
Yeah.
can't trust the recommendations if the data going into the engine is not good, right?
Yeah.
So you can, the garbage in, garbage out analogy when you talk about
Yeah.
CRM systems often is very true around your ability to digitally transform.
Right. Okay. Well, you have a lot of customers internationally that are working on digital transformation, obviously. Can you give us some examples of where it goes wrong? Because as we unfortunately know, it goes wrong maybe even more often than it goes well. So tell us a bit about where it goes wrong.
This goes back to maybe a comment you made, Renee, on really preparing and doing the work within the organization in order to be ready for a project like this. So
Mm.
it, in our experience, it doesn't usually go wrong in the technology or the, what you thought you had were able to do isn't aligned. It's that the
Yeah.
company is not either ready for the transformation, or there's misalignment on what you're looking to do. So the first pitfall we typically see is that there's not a key commitment to the objectives, even from the leadership level down. What are you really looking to achieve? Do you know
Mm.
the clear success metrics? Because this could be a
Yeah.
project over many years, many changes within maybe field leadership. Is everyone committed that that is really the goal and how it ties into your overarching company goals? If you're not committed to this project over years, people start to lose alignment to the importance of that, which jeopardizes really the initiative overall. The other piece, which is really critical, is the change management. So if we think about, the technology is really meant to help you achieve your objectives or certain processes. So if you are not aligned to potentially making a change within your sales process that is then going to be supported by that new technology, well, then it's not going to be effective. And there's a lot of
Mm.
change management that needs to happen for the people involved in order to be successful. So, taking your existing processes and building the full technology around it is usually not effective, because there's a lot of bad habits that people are then building into a different system. So, really thinking about that. And one tip and one thing that I think is really important is that the requirements management and the team involved in that aspect, so that you're really aligned on how you manage some of the potential conflict when there isn't agreement around that process. The next piece is the really focus on adoption from the beginning. We've both been in this industry for a long time, and I don't think this is unique to just recruitment and staffing, but
Mm.
most people don't like to document things in a system. People don't like to do a lot of admin work when they would rather be talking and spending valuable time with their clients and their candidates. So thinking about that end user and their experience from the beginning is crucial in order to have success from that project. So if you invest potentially $100 or millions of dollars over years to implement a new system and a process that people don't adopt, then it really is a wasted effort. So how do you ensure that that end user and the adoption and the rollout strategy is part of your initial thinking when you go into this project from the start?
Right. Okay. So to summarize, it's basically digital transformation is a means to an end, right? It should not be the end goal, because
Mhm.
you should have a true business goal that is basically fully embraced by the whole organization. and then it's a means to an end to achieve that business goal. If you don't have that, you won't get anywhere. Don't underestimate how hard it will be actually to change people's behaviors. And I think it also ties into the third part where you say, okay, go to the end user, build basically the perfect process with them, and then digitize, automate, whatever you want to call it, transform your process in such a way that that can be facilitated, versus the other way around where you say, hey, this is now what we are doing, good luck, and bad habits come back, nothing happens. And you have $100 million or $1,000, whatever your size of business is, beast standing there like a Ferrari, but it can't be driven by the organization, so you're not getting anywhere. Okay, got it. So I can imagine that a lot of people are saying now, okay, cool, I understand a bit more about what digital transformation looks like. I understand what goes wrong often. I think a lot of people can already recognize those kinds of things. But then the question obviously is, okay, so if I am a leader and I'm starting fresh with digital transformation, I know where I want to go, I want to do it right. Basically, what is the framework that I need to keep in mind in terms of what I need to think of and I need to work on in order to be successful?
This is just a couple examples, and we can look at this through the lens of maybe one project. So let's think about it with onboarding. Onboarding is something that most staffing firms and recruitment firms are facing all the time, no matter what type of staffing that they do, and can be very different if you need, in some places still from a compliance aspect, to have a signature in the office, or depending on the employment contract. So let's say if you're looking at one aspect of your process that you want to add more digital elements to. So I think that's one thing when we take a step back and people think, oh, I want to digitally transform my entire business. It's very difficult for an established business that's very large to do that in mass. So a lot of companies are thinking about, how do you take certain processes or start looking at, even if you do this onboarding project, how does it align to your core system of record, or how would it be accessible later if you were looking to integrate that? So that's really important. And I know you work a lot with this too, of how do you have these open APIs and an ecosystem that can really integrate with different things. So kind of just a background, when you think about digital transformation, thinking about your project not in a vacuum, because you want that to be able to integrate later. But if we're looking at onboarding and aligning on your high-level business strategy, it is important to have the executives and the team involved on what are the goals you're looking to achieve, because the investment, will come in around not only changes that you might ask around leaders to change expectations and process, or additional steps you might want to change, and even that cause legal considerations on what you might want to do or you might want to streamline. So having the business team is involved, but you mentioned that too on step 2 of even early getting those that are impacted involved as SMEs, subject matter experts. So having the people that on the ground are feeling the pain be involved in some of those early discovery sessions, so that they're part of that transformation team and really can help later in the process with that big pitfall of adoption. So if you have experts that are involved early, you can lean on them later as champions within the process. Really starting to define, based on the discovery sessions that you've had, what are some of the limitations? Going back to onboarding, what would it mean if this candidate was able to get all of their information within 24 hours and you had check-ins built into the follow-up in certain milestones after they're on the hire and after they're on the assignment? So thinking about what are the limitations and opportunities around why you really, again, are going to do this project. The next stage is the governance and the stakeholders. So you're starting to define kind of at a high level, you're getting buy-in for the project. When those questions come up or the conflicts come up around decisions about changes, what does your governance team look like? Who's making those decisions? Who would impact? So really understanding all of the stakeholders in the governance team as part of the early process, so that when you get to the next stage of the technical requirements gathering, the team has already been part of this so far, and you'll know who to go to if there are some clarifications or inputs that are needed. And then from the change management piece, you're starting to get to what that could look like. Who is it going to impact? How are the stakeholders going to help drive this? And then it starts to go on from here once you start getting into the real steps of the launch of the project and start thinking about what that could look like. But really, the big lesson that I've learned is if you're not putting the work into this early planning, everything that happens later in terms of really getting to the technical work and the integration can be unsuccessful because you haven't brought the organization along initially into what the benefits could be.
Yeah, and that's also what you see, right? Like as you said, ultimately digital transformation is basically project by project by project. It all needs to be part of a whole, obviously. But what you see often is that or a lot of organizations obviously don't follow this process immediately, and you can't really blame them for it, but it does happen. And that also then slows down every next project because everyone is against it because the last project failed. Why would we do the next one? Why would we invest again? Why would we have to change the way we work again within the more operational workforce? So I do see this happening a lot where organizations either do it well at the very beginning in the first project, and then it really takes off because everyone is, like you said, involved, excited, becoming more successful in one part. It's like, okay, let's keep going. Or it goes the complete other way around. Yeah, we tried something like this, but it's not for us. And everyone is basically putting up a wall, and you can't get anywhere else. So I think that's really, really important and very helpful. So from your experience, Leah, can you give us one or two examples of businesses, you don't have to name them obviously, that have gone through quite an extensive process, and like what was their business goal, right? Where did they want to go? Where were they, and where are they now? Can you give some examples to encourage others that it is actually possible?
Sure. So a couple that come to mind, maybe based on some of the conversations I've had since moving to Europe, and my history is mostly within the North American staffing market, and there are some trends that we see emerging more here, where I see some people working on digital transformation projects based on some of the things that I saw work in the States. So, for example, the growth of using vendor management systems. So that's a model that has existed in the States for a long time, and in Europe as well, in APAC, but not as large, not as adopted by the end corporate clients, but you see that growing. So I've seen some staffing firms here really looking at changing as an end goal, that business objective. How do you add speed to your process? How do you really get some of that manual work that exists with servicing VMSs out of the everyday admin work of the recruiter, so that you can really work more effectively in these programs? So some of the projects where I've seen that work, they're changing some of the business model transformations around having more specific dedicated sourcing centers and having a more automation between the VMS and their own ATS to ensure that they're getting the job requisitions faster. So I think that's been, one specific place where I've seen a lot of conversation here lately, even around in the world of post-COVID too, of how do you take costs out of your environment and add efficiency and do more with less, of adding automation, especially in areas like VMS where there's not always additional value in what that recruiter could bring to some of the sourcing, and because there's not always direct contact. So I think that's one example. Another example if we go back to the consolidation within the industry as we see companies grow and start to, not even if they're doing mergers and acquisitions, but if they are looking to specialize or they have different business lines, and the age old issue in our industry of how do you effectively cross sell. So if I have technology and developers, technology people and developers in a company, but I also could provide them clerical work and I can provide them these other type of candidates. We're seeing people work on specific projects that add more visibility amongst the sales teams and the recruitment teams to do more talent pooling and add more, not only internally around how they're working together and collaborating, but with their recruitment strategies of how they add digital aspects so that they have those candidates based on where they know they're going to start offering different types of specialization to the end client. So there's a couple areas just on the sales and the VMS side, which I think is encouraging as we see the companies hopefully bounce back faster out of the COVID crisis that we all experienced. But I'm really encouraged by, I think, the industry, especially here, looking for more ways to really accelerate faster and learn from this experience on how we can provide more value despite what the external environment throws at us.
Right. Thanks. And speaking about the current situation, COVID and all that. So we obviously, and as your own research is as well suggesting, we see the appetite for digitization, digital transformation, etc., growing. What do you see at the moment with regards to the actual investment in that space? And how do you look at the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months?
I think the conversations have accelerated. So
Mm,
many large companies. So I focus specifically on the top end of the market, so the larger staffing firms, and a lot of those firms have been looking at these projects for a considerable amount of time, but they're also very difficult to do based on all of the. We go back to the main foundations of getting information into one system and starting to bring change people's mindset. There's a lot more people and a lot more systems involved. So I do see a growth in investment, and especially with companies that see this as an opportunity to potentially move faster and gain market share. We know the research from HBR and other sources that in previous recessions, companies that did invest have proven to move faster and grow out of a recession. So
yeah.
I'm seeing certain firms choose that as a specific strategy. I think others are understandably really conservative because of the cost and
Yeah.
the change that would require and this resource strain within their organization, which I completely can understand as a business leader. And I think that it will evolve and they want to do it right. So in 2021, I think it will be a really exciting time with a lot more investment than we see now. But I absolutely see people doing some of those early stages we talked about around getting the organization ready and making sure that when they do choose a provider or start a really intense evaluation, they've done some of the early and heavy lifting to make sure they're ready to be successful.
Right. All right. So I guess we'll be both staying in this industry for a little while longer.
I think so. I think that 15 years hasn't been long enough for me. I think I got to keep going.
Okay. Is there
Yeah.
is there anything that we missed that you would like to share or to challenge our audience with?
I don't think so. I think that leaving on that note, which is certainly a challenging thought for many executives right now, who had to make some very difficult decisions to let employees go and to stop different projects, but thinking about when is the right time and what is the right opportunity to invest, knowing that think leaders that we speak to at this point know that there will be change and there will be technology that they need to embrace within the organization. So thinking about, really what would be that final trigger to know that it's the right time for them.
Right. All right. Well, first of all, Leah, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and definitely also your enthusiasm with our audience. And last but not least, thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Bolier Talks Tech. And I'll see you soon.